Hello, Maria Joao.
Hello, Ron.
You're a philosophical practitioner and you do many kinds of activities, but among them you sometimes do philosophical counseling.
Yes.
And it intrigued me to hear that you use the idea of a dream in your work, and indeed that you investigate in your academic work, you investigate the dream.
Yes.
So, can you tell me a little bit about how you use the idea of dream in philosophical counseling?
Yes, with pleasure. So the idea is from the Spanish contemporary philosopher Maria Zambrano. So I just got her theoretical ideas on the phenomenology of dreams and put it into practice. And I tested it for 4 years with the laboratory of sleep studies and chronobiology and telemedicine of the Medical School of Lisbon, neurology departments of hospitals, and then some clients of my philosophical practice. And this has been the case since 2004. So there is some case studies now that I would present at this conference. But mainly it is about using the dream for as a tool in philosophical practice. And why? Well, mainly people think that life that we spend sleeping is not worthwhile. It's just time wasted, which is not true. And even recently, Professor Hobson from Harvard Medical School came to say that. And Zambrano find out a way of analyzing dreams from time perception and not from its content. For giving an example, it does not matter if I dream with a tree or with the sun or the sea. What it's important is how the time is spent in that dream and how I relate to things. For instance, if I have a dream that I cannot open a door, or if I cannot use my voice, I want to shout and I cannot, or if I want to run but my legs don't move, this is all the same category. This is all an obstacle dream, okay? So she arrived to 3 main categories related to time experience: a temporality, which is a time frame almost zero, a conscious time or consecutive time, which is the time of the watch, what we normally speak. When we speak about time, we relate to that, and also a kind of spiral time. And then there are a few categories under these ones. And what I do is that when a client comes, and normally people that come to my consult, they are cultivated people, they have articulated speech and so on, but mainly they think one way, they feel a different way, and they act on a third way. So there is a lot of conflict and lack of harmony in their lives. And normally, when a person is in a normal, quiet time of her life, we dream every day, but we don't remember. We have a good sleep hygiene, and we just don't remember. But when we have a difficult time, we normally remember our dreams. And as people come to philosophical consult when they have difficult times, they normally remember. And this is when dreams became a tool. Because I can understand by categorizing these dreams people are having, if they are in a moment of an obstacle dream or in a monoeidetic dream, which is a very important category, which is a time frame where there is a kind of an impulse. It's like a propulsor. Life is telling you it's a moment to act and you're prepared to. This is revealed in monoeidetic dreams.
So let me see if I understand.
Yes.
One thing that you do with your counselees is you analyze their dreams, but you analyze not in a Freudian way, but rather in accordance with Maria Zambrano's ideas, which according to the temporal aspect of the dream. And the question I would like to ask is, how does this connect to philosophizing? Where does philosophy go into the picture? What do you do with that?
The dream is like a shortcut, is a tool, because as I was saying, people sometimes are very articulated. And if I just go into a more intellectual discussion on a philosophical level, sometimes I lose a lot of time and I'm even deviating from the main issue. But as dreams are involuntary, we cannot control them, somehow there is some truth coming up and so this can be used as a shortcut, as a tool, because maybe the person thinks that the problem is such and such, or makes a diagnosis of being such and such, and maybe it has nothing to do with that, and the dream reveals it. It goes straight forward to the point. Okay. And this is where I use it. I use it as a tool, as a shortcut, and then I know, okay, you're telling me this and this and this, but the problem is there. And so I can tune more easily.
So the dream helps you to orient the conversation, the counseling, on the issue that the person is dealing with. And now that, let's say that you managed to say more or less, okay, this is an issue of the person almost having to do something in their life and they don't yet have the energy to do it. What happens now?
Then we see why. If there is the energy to do it, and the monoeidetic dream, for instance, reveals it. It's really it's a very rare kind of dream. It's like, a surfing dream. You surf, you're in the moment, but you need to catch that moment if you surf, because the wave passes, and if you don't catch that moment, and if you don't act upon that thing, and this is an ethical issue. It has to do with your inner development and your realization as a person. So if you let it pass, it can even degenerate, and you have and degenerate in what they call degraded dreams, and then it can even turn into obsessions, and then I have to take this person to another kind of professional. So monoeidetic dreams, for instance, show that there is something to do, in that it is the moment to do. Sometimes people having insecurity and this and that, and then I can address why there is their insecurity and there are several techniques to deal with anxiety and insecurity, but most of the time just clarifying the problem and having these three levels, so the level of understanding, the level of feeling, and the level of action, just harmonizing these three levels, it's most of the time enough for the person to make an effective step on her life.
And what role does philosophy play in clarifying those three levels?
Well, I mainly use Ortega and Maria Zambrano. So Ortega mainly because of the circumstances, and that the subject is not a pure subject. No, if I don't allow the circumstances to inform me, that this is not me, I'm not a pure subject. So the main thing I use from Ortega is that I allow for the person to give me a context of the situation. And then what I do is to have this poetical reasoning, which is the way Zambrano does her philosophy. So it has nothing to do with the critical thinking line, which is used with other philosophical practitioners. It has to do with this poetical reasoning. So I am attentive not only to what the person is saying in terms of content and reference, but I'm attentive to the sound, I'm attentive to the posture, I'm attentive to many things that happen in the silence. So you have to develop a sensibility.
Okay. So if I understand correctly, as opposed to logical thinking, where the connections are logical between different elements in the person's life, here the connection is poetic, what Maria Zambrano describes as poetic. Yes. And so you're philosophizing, but not in a logical logic, but rather in the logic of poetry.
Well, logic is very welcome, and I think to clarify things and to really know what you mean when you say something, sometimes it's already enough, because there is a lot of confusion, and confusion does not help you. So logic is very welcome, it's really illuminating, but life is not logical most of the times. And then how do you address that? And this is when poetry comes in, because logic tends to be very rigid and settled. It's more like an architectural way of proceeding, and now we move into another way. We move into a more musical way.
Give me an example that will make it clear. Let's say that I am your counselee, and my question is, my problem is, let's say I don't get along at work with my boss and when my co-workers.
Yes. Well, actually, I had a client that had a similar situation.
Go ahead.
And he was having a lot of dreams that the teeth of his mouth were dropping. And sometimes it was just the front teeth, other times it was the lower teeth, and sometimes it was all the teeth, and it had like a sea of blood. And this was a very repetitive pattern and repetitive dreams. It happened like several times a month, which is already always, when dreams repeat, you need to pay attention to them. You need to pay attention. And this was a person that had a conflict. He was divorcing at the time. He had an authoritarian boss. And also in the dream, it happened that he dreamed that he would wake up, touch his mouth, and to verify if it was true. And in the dream, he would wake up and see it was true. He was really losing his mouth. And then with the horror, he would completely wake up at that moment and finally see it was not true. So this was an extreme situation. He was already having also stomach ulcer problems and all. So obviously, this was already turning into an obsession. And the problem was difficulty to deal with conflict. He had authoritarian boss. In his marriage, he also felt that he could not speak, so the teeth were falling, so he could not express himself. There was a non-existence feeling and incapability of dealing with the situation. So I had to go through stages with this person, seeing why he could not deal with conflict and why he could not express himself. And then we went into some dialectic techniques to train him into express himself in a non-conflicting way. So this took some time, but he made some steps. And then he could express himself at work without having all the negative emotions that usually went along. Because he would get upset. And then he could not express, and then finally when he would express, it would be an overreaction. So I
see. And where is can you say a few words about the poetic logic, so to speak, there in this case?
Well, yes. As I said before, I pay attention to the expression, the position of the body, and the sound of the words that I believe are much more enlightening than the real word that is being said. So, in the poetical way of Zambrano, the body is very important, and not only the mind but the heart. So it's a wisdom of the heart. She has a text that is the metaphor of the heart, and as you know, the heart is a rhythmic organ. Yes, it has a pulsation. So I used it. I saw how his speech was evolving and how his body language was expressing. So from being a person extremely contracted and nervous and very, he spoke in a way like that. With time, this contraction dissolved a little bit, it extended, and then he could breathe better, and then he could express himself also in a calmer way. And this also allowed for more perspectives, because it was a very tiny, narrow viewing on problems. He could not see many alternatives on an issue, and this was something to work with. And then I could work with him. As he made the process of calming down, it allowed for more space. And then it could allow for more alternatives to solve one issue. This is the poetical way.
I see. Well, thank you very much, Maria Joao. What you're reminding us, philosophical practitioners, is to look not only at the words, but also at the body and the way the sound is produced and the entire person.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. My pleasure.